let's talk about fractions. What information does a fraction convey? So if I have the fraction 1/4, what type of information does that convey? Well, it conveys two pieces of information. And they relate to, it's always related to one whole thing. So for instance, we have a whole circle here. You can think of this as a pie. It's usually the easiest way to think about it. So we have one whole pie. The bottom number, known as the denominator, so let me write this out. Denominator. The denominator tells us how many pieces to cut this pie into. So in this case, we're going to cut the pie into 4 pieces. Now it's important that you remember that the pieces are equal sized. They're always equally sized pieces. So there we go. We've cut this pie into 4 equally sized pieces. Now the top number, its name is the numerator. And it tells us how many pieces of that pie we have. So in our case, we have 1 of the 4 pieces. Okay. If this 1 was not a 1, but was instead a 2, well, then we would have 2 of the 4 pieces. And so on and so forth. If it was a 3, well, then quite simply, we would have 3 of the 4 pieces. Oops, sorry about that. And if it was a 4, well, then we'd have 4 of the 4 pieces, or in other words, we'd have 1 whole pie. Okay. Fair enough. What if we instead had, or well, let's look at another example, I should say. What if we have now 1/3, the fraction 1/3. Well, first of all, how many pieces of pie are we going to have? How many pieces are we going to cut this pie into? We're going to cut it into 3 equally sized pieces. So again, the denominator, the number on the bottom, tells us how many equally sized pieces to cut our pie into. How many pieces, how many of these 3 pieces are we going to have? Well, we're going to have 1 out of the 3. That's what the numerator tells us. And you can do this for any numbers. You could cut a pie, for instance, into 8 pieces. So you could have 5 out of 8 pieces. So this would be a pie cut into 8 equal pieces, and you would have 5 of them. And again, you could do that with any 2 numbers. So the idea behind a fraction is really, really simple. Things get a little bit more involved when we start